What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up, an all-star game, an all-star break edition of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel, and Anthony, good to be at the all-star break, yes? I don't know how you feel personally. I went down there for one of the 6 games on the homestand. You did the first 5, and I was about ready for the all-star break by the end of that one on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it was good to get the break, Bob. It's been kind of a little bit of a slog trying to get through. Here down the stretch with guys starting to get a little dinged up and are underperforming a little bit from what they had done at the beginning of the season. Not that they were leaking oil by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a real good opportunity for the Phillies to say, yeah, let's get a few days off. So I think everybody kind of felt the same way, from the clubhouse to the manager to the media. Although it was funny because it was, Saturday, and we're going to get to this, in this episode, we had an impromptu press conference with Dave Dombrowski, and of the main outlets that cover the Phillies, there was one representative there. And then it was us, the right side of the press box that people kind of forget about. So it was interesting. Like we carried that presser, which was good. So it was fun. It was interesting, and we'll get into it.
Do you think if they knew that so many of the primary guys on the center part of the press box were out, that they would have held the press conference? Do you think they would have waited a day?
I think they had to. We got
to invite the bloggers. Oh no.
No, I think that they had to, because it was a national announcement. I mean, so I don't know if we want to get into this right away, but the reality of it is, when Ranger Suarez decides not to participate in the All-Star game because of his back issue, Dombrowski has to let the league office know, and so because of that, it's a national story in the sense that we're pulling one of our guys from the All-Star game. Yeah. So I think that the availability had to happen.
Well, let's, I guess, start there. Let's start there. I was going to start with the A series, but let's start there instead. Yeah. Obviously, Ranger Suarez not good again. It's probably been now 3 or 4 starts in a row where
four in a row. Yeah,
he felt like, okay, this is not what we had seen the first 2.5 months of the season. How much concern do you have about Ranger Suarez in particular, and I guess by extension, any concerns about Zach Wheeler right now? Both dealing with back issues. Both will not pitch in the opening series after the break against the Pirates. Smart play by the Phillies, sure. Is it a concerning one?
I think that there's different levels of concern. I don't really have much concern with Wheeler. I think he's a guy that, even through his back issues, was still pitching decently, right? I think he's just kind of a guy that needed maybe a little bit of rest. He's a little bit older, so maybe give him, he's going to get 2 weeks or 13 days probably between starts. I think that'll do him a world of good. So I don't really have a concern there. The concern I have with Suarez is the load, man. Of what he's going to pitch this year. Obviously, I was bullish on him at the beginning of the season. I said 180 innings we're going to get out of him, and I'm pretty confident he's going to get there at this point, unless there's an injury that knocks him out for a little bit. But the one thing to keep in mind is, right now, he is, I think it's 52 innings ahead of any other season in his career at the All-Star break. So he's thrown 52 more innings in the first half of this season than he has at any other point in his career.
Yeah, and I mean, he's also thrown 11 fewer innings this season than he did in 2023.
The entirety of last year, right? So I do think that there is a little bit of like, is he kind of getting a little bit of fatigue, and has the back spasms cropped up from him maybe having to try and do a little bit extra physically when he's delivering his pitches to get to where he needs to get to, velocity wise. And his velocity was down, let's be honest, his last couple starts, not to the point that he can't pitch. It's not all of a sudden like he's Taiwan Walker 88 mile per hour fastballs, but he's around 91, right? I mean, So it's if you're usually throwing 93, 94, and now you're down to 91, yeah, there's a little bit of concern there. And I know a lot of people say, well, it's ever since he got hit in the hand with the line drive. I do think that's coincidental. I don't think that this has anything to do with that particular injury. I do think, though, it does come from this guy's been going straight through since February, a full spring training, a full first half of the season, and just pitching a lot of baseball, and it's something his body's just not used to, and he needs a break. And so, that's the one that I'm a little bit more keeping a closer eye on than Wheeler.
If we use the word concern, is it concern that he just won't be the guy that we saw at the beginning of the season? Is it a concern that he's going to entirely fall off the cliff? Is it a concern that they're going to have to shut him down for a prolonged stretch? Is it a concern that he might not be available come October because this is just going to be a steady decline where he's lost his effectiveness? What does that concern actually look like?
Well, it could be any one of those. I right now I'm at the level of he's probably not the guy he was the first 10 starts of the season. Mm-hmm. But can he be the Ranger Suarez we've seen in the past 2 years where he was a clutch pitcher in the playoffs and at the end of the year and one of your guys? Yeah, I still think that. I still think he's that guy. Do I think he's a 1.5 ERA guy, for another 10 starts? Probably not. But at the same time, I don't think it's like, he's falling off the table for the rest of the season. I'm not ready to go that far yet.
I don't want to lead with the trade deadline. We can talk maybe about that. I feel like we kind of take care of our business up front, and then we can speculate on trade deadline stuff. But I guess just to set the stage for that, we've talked about, because you wrote about this, we need another bat. There's got to be a bat out in left field to complement Brandon Marsh, or they need to replace the center field, or what. We've had that conversation numerous times now. They going to add another starting pitcher in your mind?
Yes, and I asked that question, and it was an intentional question at that press conference. So Dombrowski, we're in his box. It wasn't even downstairs in the press room. It was in his GM's box, and we all kind of gathered around. There's about a dozen of us, and he's talking about Ranger and where he's at, and asking about him. And at the end, I kind of wanted to catch him a little bit, and I just wanted to see what his reaction was, more so than the answer, because I knew he wasn't going to give me any kind of response that you can really feed off of. And I just asked, I said, you now have 4 pitchers, with Walker and Turnbull and Wheeler and Suarez, who have had various degrees of injury this season. Does it make you rethink what you want to do going into the deadline? As far as starting pitching is concerned, because of the depth, where your depth is at. And I think it kind of caught him a little bit, because how Dombrowski is, right? He's a guy who's always got an answer ready. He could talk, he could say 10,000 words and say nothing. He's one of those guys who's really good at crafting answers, and ultimately gave a well-crafted response. But the initial thing was a lot of, on his face, there was no video of it. We weren't allowed to shoot video. But on his face, there was a lot of, kind of back and forth. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could see me doing the impression. He's kind of going, and then he said, well, I don't necessarily think I'm rethinking it, because you're always thinking about it, right? So basically he's saying that is an area that he would consider upgrading. And then he added later on, and he tried to cover for himself, but I caught it. He said, I would expect 1 or 2 trades at the deadline. And then he pauses and he goes, well, I don't just mean us. I mean in the industry. Well, he meant the Phillies, right? It's what he meant. It's completely what he meant. So I do think that this is now a target, whereas maybe all season long, because of how good things were going with the starting pitching, maybe it was not on our minds as a target. But now when you see that, maybe we have a little bit of concern. I mean, how often can we rely on Tyler Phillips and Michael Mercado in the second half of the season to fill in,
we'll get to that. I'll tell you how much you can rely on them.
Right. So that, to me, I think starting pitching, and what I mean by that, I'm not talking about a hammer, a top of the rotation kind of guy, but I do think you're talking maybe a depth piece, a guy that could be a swing man. a dare I say Michael Lorenzen type. Not to say it would be him,
I think I
but
mentioned his name a couple weeks ago. He
but
actually would make sense.
Yes, but that type of pitcher who you can use as a fifth starter, as a long man out of the pen. So I'm not saying anything set that's going to be a sexy name that they're going to be linked to. It's not like they're going out and getting Garrett Crochet, who's the big, a big name on the market. 25-year-old lefty leads the league in strikeouts. I don't think that's the case, but I do think that there will be a depth add that could be a starter. Yes.
So I think in a way it's probably good that this has all happened now, 2.5 weeks before the trade deadline, than if we were a month from now and it has come and gone and now you're kind of strapped down to what you have. I will jump to the pair of names that you brought up. Don't know how long you can rely on a Tyler Phillips or a Michael Mercado. Let's start with Michael Mercado. I will tell you how much longer you can rely on him. That time has come and gone. I don't know about you. I'm not going to pick on the guy. I actually thought on Sunday he was thrown into a little bit of a tough situation. So someone asked me yesterday, actually it was Mike Gill. He was like, why did they start Kerkering? And I said, well, you saw how he came out against the Braves in the first start and he looked nervous. And I think that his prep, and I know he had been going through the cadence of a starter in AAA, but it just looked like he was not comfortable in that situation. So to kind of give him an opportunity to enter the game, give him a different look, a different feel into the game, and you don't have to face the top of the A's order, even though they let him face Rooker to start the second. I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's see if we can change it up. It kind of looked clear to me, though, that he had some life early, and then by the fourth inning, he was tanked. It was over. And then they put him out there in the fifth, then they put him back out there to start the sixth, and it just kind of became apparent that it wasn't about setting up Michael Mercado for success. It was about just try to give us as many outs as you possibly can. It almost doesn't even matter if we're competitive. And I thought that they basically waved the white flag when they allowed Mercado the second time to face Rooker after he had taken him 450 over the batter's eye 2 innings earlier. So to give him that matchup again, the result was predictable, but it felt more like the Phillies went into survival mode in that game of let's just get through it. It doesn't even matter. Than about let's see what we can really evaluate in terms of Michael Mercado's ability to hang up here. And the reason why I bring that up is because when you do that to a player, to me, it says you don't have plans for him beyond that moment. I don't think you'll see Michael Mercado in the second half unless they have to bring him back up because guys get injured. I just don't. I would be surprised if we see him again.
Well, I don't know if I'll go there just yet. And I agree with you that was exactly what usually happens. And I'll give you a perfect example. The Dodgers did it against the Phillies. In the game that the Phillies blew out the Dodgers, the first game of the series, they left Bobby Miller in well past when he should have been left in. He got torched in the game, and it was why are they not pulling him? And it was more because it's well, we're going to send him down anyway. So let's just get as much out of him as we can. We're going to lose this game, chalk it up, and move on. And then the next day they demoted him, right? I mean, teams do that all the time. They will use up the guy that they're going to send down. So it's very real, that possibility. The only question that I have for you then, Bob, is are you coming out of the break, sending Mercado down and recalling somebody else? Remember, you can't recall Marte right now, unless you put somebody on the IL, which they're not going to do.
So you don't have to. I mean, to me, if you see him against the Pirates this weekend, it's in a similar situation. Either you're protecting a 9-run lead, or
you're getting blown out.
I think that they probably carry him for a few days and make him move. I mean,
that's
that
fair.
Being said, I could see a world where they say, all right, he's got a live arm. We like him. He's going to be the last piece in the bullpen. He's going to be that project piece, and we'll let him come in and pick his spots and see what we can get. And maybe if he can go max effort for 1 inning, they haven't given him that look yet. Maybe you give him an opportunity to prove himself up here as that max effort 1 inning guy. The problem that I have, though, is you also are now carrying Jose Ruiz, who, look, Rob Thompson after the game on Sunday, post-game press conference, talks about it, says, we like Jose Ruiz. He's good arm. He's just kind of going through a little bit right now. I just don't know, Mercado and Ruiz back. I don't think that they're going to carry both of these guys for the next 3 weeks.
I don't either. I just don't think that it's an automatic send down day one. I think Mercado's with them a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's some work to do. I'm not burying Michael Mercado as a professional pitcher here. Like, let's be clear, but you look at walks per 9 last year, over 5 walks per 9 a year ago, across 2 levels. This year, over 4 walks per 9 in AAA. He gets up here. I think he has 7 walks in 11 2/3 innings. And when he's in the zone, there's been a lot of mistakes. I mean, those pitches to Rooker the other day were just, like, where do you think those pitches are going to end up? Yeah. So just the lack of consistent command. I like the arm. He's only 25 years old. There may be something there, but like right now, it feels like a work in progress piece. And I just don't know this team's capacity to carry that when you have some other guys right now that are really struggling. I mean, I'll tell you who kind of got away with one on Sunday was Sir Anthony Dominguez.
Yeah.
It's been this like steady climb after a rough start for him to get his ERA under 4. And, you don't always feel good about it. He loses his command sometimes where he just is completely non-competitive with certain pitches, but then he rebounds. Every time he comes out, it's 2 strikeouts or 4 strikeouts over 2 innings. And you go like, all right, like, I don't feel super confident and comfortable, but like the numbers are the numbers. He's been pretty effective overall. And then on Sunday, it was just another one of these blow-ups where you're like, oh, man, like I kind of thought at one point, even at the low points, like beginning of May, where the numbers were just hideous, I'm like, this is a guy that got several key outs for them in 22 down the stretch and in the postseason. He's going to work his way back into the trust, like the circle of trust. And just he hasn't. Like, he's the guy that you use when it's 5-1 in the 5th or 6th inning, either way, 6-1 in the 5th or 6th.
I think he's worked back into the circle to a limit. So in other words,
the circle of necessity. Like,
well, it's a little bit of that, but I do think that it's like, hey, we'll bring him in middle leverage. It doesn't have to be low leverage, right, but we're certainly not going to. He's not one of the dudes at the back, right? He's not one of the big 4. He's not going to come in, in a real tight spot unless it's, again, out of necessity. But at the same time, I look at it and say, if it's the 7th inning and they're down 3-2 or down 4-2, and you need an inning, I think guys like him and Soto are still in the mix, like in those situations, right? I don't think it's like definitely bring you in to protect the lead, but if the game's close and we need you to keep it close, we still think you can do it. So I think that's kind of where Dominguez and Soto are. Although Soto's been quietly really good for a bit now, and I think it's probably worth looking at him a little bit, because part of me thinks that if this continues over the course of the next 2 weeks, that maybe they don't feel the need to get another bullpen arm, because maybe Soto becomes the 5th guy in that back end, the way he's been going.
Yeah, and I mean, look, in fairness to Sir Anthony Dominguez, he made 10 appearances in the month of June through 8 2/3 innings. He only allowed 5 hits, struck out 10, and he didn't allow an earned run in the month of June. I mean, it was a really good June, and he got off to an okay start in July. For his first 4 appearances, he only allowed a run in 1 of them, but then Sunday was just a mess. I mean, 4 earned runs in an inning and a third, and 2 of them home runs. And so it's just like, again, I think you're right, and you're going to have those guys in your bullpen. Not everybody has to be the hammer. Not everybody has to be, having the year that Matt Strahm or Jeff Hoffman's having. It very rarely does that happen, but there's like this like audible groan I felt like on Sunday where you're just like, oh man, like this is a huge step back for this guy, because he had been gaining some momentum. So I think you keep tabs on that. Now, talked a little bit about Michael Mercado. Let's talk a little bit about Tyler Phillips. The last time I saw Tyler Phillips pitch in person was on May 28th, 2015, and he was pitching in Brooklawn for Bishop Eustace against Gloucester Catholic. Bishop Eustace beats Gloucester Catholic that day 2-1, advancing to the final of the non-public A South final. Very exciting stuff. At the time, he was going up against a really good Gloucester Catholic lineup. I obviously had the South Jersey baseball background. And the guy that they were throwing, his name was John Murphy, was a stud, like going to Maryland, very highly recruited, touted. And as good as Tyler Phillips was, he was sort of like, in my mind, and some South Jersey baseball people might listen to this and say, you didn't really remember this the right way. But in my mind, he was not nearly as pumped up as the guy from GC was. And he was awesome, like won them the game, and you fast forward 9 years later and here he is now getting a win in his home debut and his first major league start in Philadelphia, which is obviously a cool story. And it was written about quite a bit over the weekend. I guess the question for me is, do they have something here? We are very quick to overreact. We could have done this with Michael Mercado. He gave him 5 pretty good innings against the Cubs. We at the time noted that he was hit sort of hard and dodged some trouble and maybe was the beneficiary of good luck. But Tyler Phillips has also got a .9 whip now in 10 innings. He struck out 12 batters. Like, he's shown something here, but has he shown enough to maybe be a factor? And when I say factor, I don't necessarily expect him to hang in there in that 5th spot in the rotation down the stretch, but he's a guy that is rostered by them moving forward. Like, how do you see it working out for him?
I'm a pump the brakes guy. And as much as I love the story, and you got a local kid and he's pitching for his hometown team, and only the 3rd pitcher ever and first in 100 and some years to go through his first 2 appearances with 12 strikeouts and no walks.
Mind you, I would like to have him on the show at some point.
Yeah, no, I understand, and that's great. And it seems like a nice guy. Talk to him a little bit, before his first start, and then after the game as well. I look at the track record, Bob, and I like to look at the minor league track record, and it's just okay, right? And to me, the gap between the AAA and the majors is bigger than it's ever been, ever. And so if you are struggling to get guys out, and I don't want to say he was struggling. I mean, he was, like I said, he was okay. But if you aren't dominating at that level, odds are you're going to be just a guy or worse at the major league level. And fine performance, gave them 6 strong innings. Then he kind of get up the home run and the double, and they pull him in the 7th, ends up allowing 4 runs in 6 innings. It's okay, not even a quality start. Gets the win. That's fine. It was a fine performance. I'm not criticizing it. But that's also against the Oakland A's. What's it going to be like?
Well, no, they do have the 28th scoring offense in Major League Baseball, or at least they did coming into Sunday's game.
They hit some home runs. They do hit some home runs. But I look at this. I look at the schedule coming up. Right. I mean, he's going to start against Pittsburgh. That's fine. Their offense stinks. But does he get another start after that against the Yankees? And Cleveland? And, the teams that are coming up that are going to be really good teams, I don't see it, Bob. I don't think the Phillies will trust him into those spots. I think maybe he could be, maybe there's something there for the bullpen as a long guy. I don't know. But I'm not ready to jump on that bandwagon just yet.
Okay. So I guess let's just jump to the next step. Where's Taijuan Walker? What's the plan here? Because Spencer Turnbull, the idea is we probably won't see him for another 4 or 5 weeks. Okay. When Taijuan Walker went on the injured list, we were told that he had a hot spot on his finger.
Yeah.
It's been a very, very hot spot because it's been multiple weeks now, and he's not pitching this weekend after the All-Star break. So what's the deal here? 2 things. One, let's have the conversation that we'll have, which is when do you expect to see him, and what do you expect upon his return? And then let me ask you another question. What's actually going on with Taijuan Walker right now?
Yeah, I asked Rob on Thursday what his deal was, and he said threw a bullpen Wednesday, it looked good. He was supposed to throw another bullpen on Saturday. So if you're throwing bullpens every 3rd day, that means you're trying to get yourself lined up. My guess would be they would still need to get him a rehab stint, right, before they would just throw him back into a major league game, especially with the schedule that they have coming up. You're not just going to say, okay, welcome back. You haven't pitched in a month. Here's the Yankees. Here's the the Guardians. You're not doing that, right? So I would say that there would have to be a rehab stint. If that's the case, you're now pushing him out to the deadline. Part of me thinks that you might be able to find him a new home.
Wow. Okay. You think that's where this is heading?
Part of me thinks that that's a possibility. Yes. Do I know that for certain? I don't. I don't have any inside information that says that they're looking to move him or anything like that. But I'm just kind of like looking at how do you miss basically a month and a half with a blister, which is what a hot spot. The hot spot is the blister underneath the skin. So it hasn't broken through to the top of your skin, but it's underneath. That's what a hot spot is. So how are you missing that much time with a blister?
Well, when he went on the injured list, my reaction was, okay, they've made up. Whether or not, I'm not saying they've created an injury. I'm not accusing them of that. In fact, I'm sure that there's an issue.
Right.
So you make the move. But at the same time, I think that coincided with this isn't working out. Let's see if we can reset everything here. Like, let's just totally shut this thing down. Let the finger get better. Let them, whatever else is going on. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a mental thing. The fact of the matter is he's just not throwing the ball hard enough. There's just not enough life on his pitches. And his splitter, which was kind of what got him through last year,
he's not throwing it.
He couldn't throw it. He wasn't throwing it. So
yeah,
I guess you can tie that into the hot spot, whatever. But to me, it's like, okay, you've seen that, and you kind of look at it and go like, all right, that's convenient, and then you see how long he's been out now, and it just feels like there's a lot more to it than, we're just letting him recover from his blister injury. I mean, if you want to take that at face value, you can, but it feels like there's a little bit more to it here. So yeah, I don't know what the plan is, but now I have to ask you, like, don't you now kind of need him as you're Mercadoing and Phillipsing your way through, and you have concerns about Ranger Suarez's durability here? Or do you think they just simply, is it like they bring in a starting pitcher at the deadline, and then because once they've done that, they can then let Taijuan Walker go, or not let him go, but try to find him a new home?
Yeah,
they need the depth now.
Yeah, but I think that I think that they may have seen enough.
Yeah,
does that make sense? I mean, it's like, guess you don't want him on the show, huh?
No, and I'm not trying to be a dick. Like I think he's a
good guy. Everybody in that clubhouse likes him, right?
Yeah, everyone likes him. He's a good guy. At the same time, gotta be better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same concept. It's like if they were willing to eat the money on Merrifield and admit a mistake there, I think that they're willing to do. I think they're willing to admit the mistake here too.
We didn't even talk about that. We got to get to that.
Yeah, I look at it and say, maybe that you find a partner who will take him, and you pay off part of that salary, and say to the other team, thanks for taking him off our hands. We'll eat some of that salary, right? I just think that that's a real possibility at this point.
So let me just kind of go back and run through the last 10 days or so. The Phillies lose 2 out of 3 with a bunch of injuries to the Braves. There was a lot of this team's in trouble. Do you think Atlanta can catch the Phillies? And a ton of concern. Then the Phillies go out and they dominate the Dodgers for 3 days in South Philadelphia. And it's like, this team's the best team in baseball. Oh my God. Nobody can stop them. And then they lose 2 out of 3 to the A's. And it's like, this team is showing its weaknesses. There's holes everywhere. It's exhausting, number one. But number two, okay, so you take those 3 series. You saw some good and bad. You saw a lot of good in the middle. What was your main takeaway from how the Phillies finished down the stretch? Is this a team that you expect to regroup coming out of the gate in the second half and continue to be what they've been? Or are the Phillies showing any signs of, fracture or any real weakness here as they come out of the break?
No, I think that you're seeing a little bit of regression with the pitching, and that was to be expected. They couldn't pitch. They all couldn't be sub-2 ERA guys for an entire year. That's ridiculous. So you knew they had to come back to earth a little bit. But I've been impressed since Schwarber and Harper got back in the line, although Harper wasn't very good against the Dodgers, didn't need to be. Everybody else hit. But I've been impressed with the lineup. Like, I think that they've done a nice job in those 6-game homestand. Even losing 2 of 3 to the A's, I felt like they were okay. The
I thought Friday
game,
night was frustrating. Hogan Harris just could not throw a strike.
Yeah, they missed a couple opportunities for sure.
A lot of opportunities early on, and they just couldn't do anything with it. And then I was a little bit surprised. Joey Esty stinks. Like,
yeah,
I tweeted out during the game. I mean, he had made 7 road starts this season, 9.10 ERA. Phillies, they get on him early with the Turner home run. They only had 2 runners in scoring position to the 6th inning. Like, they were quiet Sunday, I thought. Now, Saturday was a different story. They did some things, especially late. I'm not going to sit here and start poking holes in the lineup or anything like that, but I was not as impressed with the lineup over the weekend. I just wasn't. Now, I do feel like Sunday, it's easy, like from a narrative standpoint, you see the result and you say, oh, they were checked out. Like the All-Star game or the All-Star break began a day early. I thought that was absolutely the case. Once they went down 4-1, I'm not saying that they showed up to the game like that, but once they went down 4-1, it was just like, all right.
Yeah, see, I felt like when they got a couple runs back in, what was it, the 6th inning?
Yeah, but what did they do? How did they get that? So they were down 7-1, and they get it to 7-2 on a sac fly, and then they get the 3rd run because the left fielder threw the ball to third base and there was nobody there. I mean, like that wasn't like the Phillies doing anything. That was a guy not paying attention.
No, but I did think that, like, okay, if they get through this next inning in the top of the 7th, and it's still 7-3, they might try and get them to, like, as they've done many times, get themselves back into this thing. Yeah. It was just that everything went to hell in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning in the game, and at that point, yes, they were checked out. There was no interest in trying to come back at that point. But
all right.
Yeah.
So I hear you, and I mean, like, I don't have a sharp takeaway from the weekend. I think they did what they needed to do against the Braves and Dodgers and going 4-2 overall. I think they probably did mentally think, okay, here come the A's. We don't lose at home. We will likely win the series and we'll go our separate ways for a little bit. And it didn't happen. There was a game that swung in there that left them probably a game short of what they wanted on that homestand. You and I both said 5-1 coming in. That looked pretty damn good after the 3rd game, especially. So to finish 4-2 is a little bit disappointing, but you still look at the overall big picture of where they're at in the standings, the lead that they have for the number 1 spot in the National League, certainly the 8.5-game lead over the Braves. It's hard to really sit here today and say anything negative about where the Phillies are from a high-level standpoint.
No, I agree. I mean, it's if you're going to complain about anything about the Phillies, then imagine what you would have to say about the other 29 teams in baseball, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and
that's the thing. If you want to do that real quick, like the Braves are gaining some momentum in like if you look across the board, if I were doing my power rankings right now, I'd say like, hey, look, Atlanta splits out in Arizona 4 games, then they win 2 out of 3 against a pretty decent Padres team. They beat the Phillies 2 out of 3 at home. They did what they absolutely had to do in that series. They've been trending back up a little bit, but you look around the rest of the sport, and it's like, especially the elite teams, the Baltimore Orioles were an Anthony Volpe error and Alex Verdugo falling down on a fly ball away from losing 6 games in a row going into the break. The Yankees have been atrocious for the last 4 weeks. Those are the 2 powers of the American League. And then you look at the National League, the Dodgers. All this talk about the Dodgers. Well, you saw what happened this week in Philadelphia. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is wide open after you get through those 4 or 5 teams. The Yankees, if you want to keep them in that conversation, the Orioles, the Phillies, the Dodgers, and I'd probably include the Braves in that. Then you have your Twins and Guardians and Mariners of the world and your Brewers of the world, but I don't think that those are your World Series champs either. So it's interesting. I do want to
there's one team.
The Mets.
No, make it the Mets. The
Mets are hot.
They're hot. They're fine. They're whatever. They're a mediocre team. I think we both picked them 3rd at the beginning of the season, and we both had them around 500. And I think that's kind of where they're going to be.
The team that you are going to say is the Houston Astros. But
but you didn't mention the Astros, but they are going to. I think they're going to ultimately win the American League West. The team that's going to scare me, Bob, if, and this is a big if, because they don't traditionally add, but if they can add a couple bats before the deadline, do you want to face that Pirates pitching staff in a short series?
Paul Skeens is pretty good, man. If you would have told me 3 weeks ago Paul Skeens was starting the All-Star game, I would have rolled my eyes. I'm like, give me a break. Like, what are we doing? He's been the best pitcher in baseball since he's come up, I think. I mean, I don't know. You may have an argument for me, but
well, I mean, my argument. I have zero problem with him being in the All-Star game at all. I think that he deserves to be there. I just have a thing where it's like you're going to make a guy who's made 11 career starts the starting pitcher in the All-Star game. Like, that's got to be reserved for somebody else. And I get it that the guys that probably you would have given it to all bailed out on the All-Star game, right? Sale and Wheeler and Suarez, none of them are pitching. And
so all the guys there, who should be starting the game then, if not him?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's why I'm not as upset about it, because he's really kind of the fourth option. Like, if those guys were available and they still picked Skeens, then I'd be up in arms.
Yeah.
Right? But
did you watch the home run derby last night?
Not 1 second of it.
So I can tell by your answer that you are not a home run derby guy in general.
No.
Were you ever a home run derby guy, like Berman, A-Day, like back?
No,
never did anything for you.
I remember watching. The only one that I remember watching with any kind of interest, and it was purely dumb luck that I even had it on the TV. Like, I really wouldn't normally put it on, but it was the time Bobby Abreu won. And it was just like, I remember it was on the TV and was like, let me just watch Bobby Abreu. And then he went off and, set the record at the time for most home runs in a home run derby. And so I was kind of intrigued by it just because of that, because it was a non-home run hitter setting a record in a home run derby. So, like, that interested me. But other than that,
two quick takeaways from it. I actually didn't mind the new format. They get 40 pitches on 3 minutes in the rounds. Then it goes into a bonus. Okay. I actually thought that the way that the format was played out was good. It was competitive. Like, every single hitter in the first round, like, they had a shot. You were thinking, okay, maybe they'll make a run at it here. Cool. So from like a retention standpoint, no problem with it. But I just can't get I can't get past the lineup. Like, Pete Alonso, nobody likes him. Alec Boehm, he has 11 home runs. Sorry, Alec. Like, he acquitted himself well last night. He was very good. Alec Boehm almost won the thing.
Hit 36, right?
Dallas Garcia, Gunnar Henderson, stud. I would actually maybe put him in my 8, even though he was the worst of all of them. Teoscar Hernandez, Marcelo Zuna. Did you see how many like puff pieces were written about Marcelo Zuna this week?
I know.
He's not really liked by the fans, but man, what a great teammate. Like, do we need to write that piece? Like, do we really need to go to bat for Marcelo Zuna? Come on, man. Jose Ramirez and Bobby Wood Jr. And Bobby Wood Jr. is a stud. I'm not saying that these guys aren't great players, but like, those are the 8 guys that you're selling me on for a home run derby. Like, until the guys that you want to see want to participate, you cannot get me to fully invest my time or attention into it. Like, and I know it's an exhibition at the end of the day. Who really cares? It doesn't prove that you're actually the best home run hitter. It doesn't prove that you're better than anyone else. Like, there's no real meaningful takeaway from it. But just from an event perspective, if you want to turn it into a spectacle and make it this mythical event, then you can't give me, who do I want to pick on here? Like, I guess you can't give me Alec Boehm or Dallas Garcia and Marcelo Zuna. You just can't. You want
what you want. You got to make it worth $1 million. You got to make
it worth their time. But like, as a 9-year-old, like, it's like, do you remember the Marcelo Zuna home run derby? Like, no, come on, man.
Right.
Teoscar Hernandez won last night. When you're 35 years old and you're kicking around your memory bank, at least we were talking about like Griffey and Sosa and McGuire. For me, Griffey, Sosa, McGuire, and Berman. Like, there was something to remember there. Oh yeah, Teoscar Hernandez beat Bobby Witt in the final. It was insane. Like, come on.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. If you want the Shoheis and the Harpers and the Judges and,
and if you want Trout, you got to do it in like March.
Yeah. But no, you have to make it the prize be $1 million. You have to make it something worth their while to
That
actually
would be
take
awesome.
part.
Though. I would say, like, if you give me the eight dudes I want to see going at it for $1 million, like I'm all in.
Yeah, I probably would watch. But the one thing I can say, even though I didn't watch 1 second of it, I saw that our boy Bryce was at his pandering best yet again.
No, come on. He's part of the fabric of the community. Water.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
2 quick things here because I know we're a little bit short on time. I want you to simply react to the following. Since May 19th, there are 21 qualified second basemen. Bryson Stott has a 205 average, which is 20th of those 21 qualified second basemen. He's last in slugging percentage and dead last in OPS amongst all qualified second basemen. What do you make of that? Because we've been talking about this, like, oh, he's struggling a little bit, and then I pulled the numbers relative to the rest of the league, and I'm like, holy smokes, like, this is not just like a little, he's not quite doing what you'd expect. Like, he's been bad. I mean, that's bad. That's 2 months of being bad.
Yeah, it is. And the thing of it is, Bob, I think it's worth bringing up now because we sat here and we weren't alone. Everybody else in the city roasted Nick Castellanos for the horrible start that he had, right? Oh, how terrible is he? Get this guy out of here. Trade him. He stinks. Blah, 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 blah. Well, Nick Castellanos now has a higher OPS than Bryson Stott. He's passed Bryson Stott.
679 to 676.
Yep, he's passed him. And if you ask me right now, I think that Castellanos probably gets up into the 730, 740 range before the end of the season, and I'm not sure Bryson Stott gets over 700.
Stott in his career first 2 seasons, 733 OPS post All-Star break. They'll hope, I guess, that continues that trend. They just got to get him out of the middle of the lineup. You know, it's not like, oh, should they bench Bryson Stott or anything like that? That's not the conversation I'd have, but you can't have this guy hitting 5th or 6th if he's going to be that unproductive.
No, against righties, I wouldn't mind flipping him in Marsh. My only problem with Marsh is he's striking out way too much. We talked about that last week. But you know, against right-handers, I could see flipping him because at least Marsh has got an OPS over 800 against right-handers. So okay, you know, he might strike out some, but at least he's got a chance of being productive in the 5-hole, whereas Stott has not been.
All right, next one for you, real quick. I got 2 more. Philly's schedule out of the All-Star break here. Obviously, you have the Pirates. They don't always play well at PNC Park, and you just mentioned yourself that they have quite a bit of pitching, so that will be a test for them. They have the Yankees, they have the Guardians and Twins, they have the Mariners, the Dodgers, and the Diamondbacks. Entering Sunday, the combined record of the Phillies' first 7 second-half opponents stood at 374 and 296. That's a .558 winning percentage. Phillies better hit the ground running in the second half because that schedule is no joke, man.
No, it is. You're right, and it's going to be tough. And then even beyond that, even though they play a couple of weaker teams after that Arizona, that West trip between Seattle, LA, and Arizona, it's part of a month where they play 29 games in 31 days.
Yeah.
So even though you're playing the Miamis and the Washingtons for a 1-week homestand, and then you got to go right back on the road against Atlanta, Kansas City, and then come home and play Houston and Atlanta.
Yeah,
like it's a brutal
that
schedule.
Is a brutal schedule.
Yes, it's very brutal. I don't anticipate that the Phillies will be winning 2 out of every 3 for the next 6 weeks. But at the same time, if they can just kind of hold the fort over those 6 weeks, I think that you're going to be in just fine shape entering September.
And finally, what was your favorite memory of the Whit Merrifield era?
His line about leaving the entire Premier League on base in London.
I will say this. I thought that he was well-liked in the clubhouse. I thought he was accountable. I think that he was disappointed in how he played, all of those things. Were you surprised that they made that move? And do you buy the explanation that they wanted to see if Weston Wilson could be that guy ahead of the trade deadline?
No, I don't buy the Weston Wilson thing a little bit.
Didn't think you did.
No, but look, I give them credit. I thought it was at the time that they signed him, and if you go back and listen to this podcast, the episode at that time, I thought it was a great signing at the time. I thought he was going to be that Ben Zobrist type player who came in and made that kind of super utility difference to an offense that could really use that kind of player. And he was nothing of the sort, not even close. And it was weak contact, not great defensively, especially in left field. I mean, he was fine when he filled in for Stott at second base because that's his natural position. But yeah, just not enough, Bob. Really not enough, and never really could adapt to being a role player. And that's really what it kind of came down to. So yeah, that's a disappointing thing, and I think that the Phillies will upgrade that spot as well at the deadline.
All right. Well, anything else before we get out of here?
I got one last thing, but it is Phillies related. Normally one last thing is not Phillies related, or at least, you know, if it is, it's kind of only tangential. This is directly Phillies related. MLB draft happened, and the Phillies took 5 outfielders in the first 7 rounds. What do you make of that? I know. Look, I know nothing about these kids, right? 2 of them are high school kids, right? Like we have no idea.
That's why I didn't bring up the draft at all, because I would be a total fraud if I was like, oh yeah, smooth swing, great athlete.
No, none of that stuff.
My takeaway is that they will probably be trading an outfielder at this year's deadline, maybe Justin Crawford.
I agree, and that was where I wanted to kind of go with this, because I kind of looked at it and said, when you are that heavy on one position, it means that you feel like, A, you don't really have the depth there. And when you look and say, okay, well, what do they have there? Oh, all right. Well, Crawford is one of your top prospects, and he's an outfielder. Is he a guy that's probably going to have to be moved at the deadline? So let's start seeing if we can find a replacement for him as far as our future for the outfield. And I think that that's why they did what they did, and drafted an older high school kid, right? I mean, the kid that they drafted, that's the one thing I'll say about him, other than the fact that his dad's an assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Dante Nori, I think is the kid's name, right? He's older for a high school kid, so maybe he projects to getting to, you know, through the minors a little bit faster than your typical minor leaguer.
From now, you know, it's like, do you trust that Johan Rojas is part of that? Do you trust that Brandon Marsh can become an everyday guy, or is he just going to be a platoon guy here for 4 years?
Right.
Nick Castellanos is probably not. Well, Nick Castellanos is not going to be a part of this beyond his contract. Kyle Schwarber's done playing left field at that point. Like, they have a ton of question marks, and Justin Crawford's one of the answers. And you are thinking about potentially unloading him come the end of this month. Then yeah, like, you have to restock, and you have to restock in volume. So that was my takeaway. But yeah, if you're asking me for my draft opinions, I would be totally doing you a disservice, because I don't know a damn thing.
No, I would never ask you that, because it's, unless it was a kid who played like South Jersey, I would say to you, hey, do you saw him play? Do you whatever, and get your thoughts. But I just wanted to kind of see if you saw it the same way I did, that drafting all those outfielders was more indicative that Justin Crawford's the guy that they're dangling in trades.
Yep. All right. Well, for Anthony Sanfilippo and Bob Wankel, we'll be back on Friday as Phillies start the second half. They'll open up against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Aaron Nola versus
Bailey Falter.
Now, Pirates haven't announced their starter yet. I think it's going to be Skeens.
Okay.
It depends on how many innings he goes tonight. If he only goes 1 inning tonight, I think it'll be Nola Skeens on Friday night.
Okay. Doesn't quite have the same.
Could be fun.
Flair of Bailey Falter, though.
I think Falter's injured, isn't he?
Is he? Yeah, I don't know.
I think he went on the 15 right before the All-Star break.
He's actually having a decent year. All right. Well, anyway, we'll talk to you on Friday. See you.